way that human beings experience the world is presumptively reasonable. And religion does offer a kind of generic universal mode of experience, as we've just been discussing. It supplies a way to experience a committed belief relationship with some paranormal agent or another, right? And if it's so universal, there ought to be this sort of first order, prima facie, if you will, presumptive rationality. Doesn't mean it isn't overridable or falsifiable or correctable, but there's this sort of presumptiveness. And we do this with other things. Take, for example, I was talking earlier about Mark Hauser's research into basic intuitive morality. The fact that we find this basic intuitive morality nearly universal across peoples and cultures and time frames, right, lends it a sort of presumptive plausibility and justification. In other words, if you want to completely override it, you better have a very good reason. Otherwise, don't mess with it. Right? Second, a universal belief set is presumptively reasonable. Third, a universal social practice is right negating the pattern here, right? We see so many people doing so much religion, there must be something to it, right? And then, of course, therefore, right, because we have these universal modes of experience, similar, I don't mean common as in the same belief sets, right? Very different gods or no gods or angels but no demon, right? Whatever it is, but the common in the sense that you have these paranormal agents operating. Similar social practices, again, right? Some have churches and some don't, and some, right? I mean just that there are these religious social practices that you see. Therefore, religion entire, in all of its dimensions, is presumptively reasonable. And it is unreasonable to expect or demand that people stop being religious. And so goes the argumentative conclusion, right? And if premises 1 through 4 are plausible, then they would lend some support to the validity of this conclusion. And indeed, we see this pattern of argument, and we see defenses of this conclusion spreading very widely among preachers, ministers, theologians of many different religions nowadays. You've seen this, right? And I think it's going to grow more common, which then arouses the question, can it really help justify religion? Well, let's look at an argument that says, no, it's really not that much help. First of all, remember, we know that many universal experiences, religious or otherwise, are just errors. I mean, lots of people have believed lots of things that have turned out to be false. The fact that they're universal doesn't mean that they're not correctable or improvable. For example, I don't think anyone in this room would be content to live their lives or have their neighbors live their lives only according to those basic moral intuitions that I was referring to either. We also like laws protecting human rights, which is not on the list of basic moral intuitions, right? So we want to at least add or correct or compensate for the inadequacies of what may be universal. So that's why these universal things aren't sort of presumptively reasonable. We should think about them very hard, and we might want to adjust them. Second of all, many universal belief sets are irrational. Third, many universal social practices are immoral. Now you see, right, we're starting to test for inner consistency. Religion, for example, contains errors, irrationalities, and vices. So goes the claim, right? Therefore, only reason is presumptively reasonable. That's a Shookism I came up with, but you're free to borrow it, right? It's a long bumper sticker, though, so don't go there. It really doesn't work as a bumper sticker for friends of reason. But I think it's a piece of wisdom. We're constantly looking for these things that are presumptively reasonable, and the tendency is in our temptations to argue by rhetoric, it can do bad work. Only reason is presumptively reasonable. We have to think about everything else. It's unreasonable for religion to seek ways of avoiding criticism. Furthermore, I would point out, after all, no religion endorses all experiences, notoriously. Right? For any given religion, if a religious believer steps up and says, well, you know, I had this conversation with God last night, and he's really not happy with the way things are going in this church, that person's probably not going to feel real welcome after a while, right? Each religion has only a narrow band of religious experiences that it's capable of confirming or tolerating. Ask Ann Hutchinson. That's a little bit, I'm an intellectual historian of American thought, so I just throw that in there, right? Ann Hutchinson had a disagreement with her Puritan elders and died in the wilderness from wolves because of it. You knew I'd get wolves back in there. Now, furthermore, no religion avoids all contradictions. No religion never needs moral updating, right? Furthermore, religions are very busy contradicting and criticizing each other, right? So religion can't be presumptively reasonable when the religions in it can't get their story straight. I'm not saying they should get their story straight, but I'm just saying, right, you can't assume that religion is presumptively reasonable because we see too much disagreement, too much diversity. Now let me bring the story down to the present. A lot's been going on with religion, and I think we need a little bit more fine-tuned approach to understand what psychology can and can't tell us about religion and where philosophy might have to start getting involved. Definitely have to get involved. First of all, we'll return to our category of community, right? Religion sustaining religious practices. But now we've got civilization. Now we're talking about the last 8, 10, 12,000 years, however long it is that we've been congregating in high population centers. Cities have special problems that humans haven't had to deal with before. You've got too much anonymity. You're dealing suddenly with a lot of strangers who probably aren't family anymore, so it's hard to get to know them. With the rise in urban populations, cities need to try to prevent cheating. They need to try to enhance trust. They need to try to enhance hospitality. Classic problems of any concentration of human populations. Theologies now start to kick in. Theologies are intellectual superstructures intelligently designed to try to rationally explain and defend a religion. That's an exceedingly brief thumbnail definition, but it works for me, so I'll give it a try tonight. Right, so don't confuse religion and theology. Theology is an extra intellectual effort. I'm not saying religions aren't intelligent or intellectual, they are. But the theology takes it to the next level. They're interested in intellectually defending one religion or another. So theologies then try to help solve this problem with urban religion. So they try to heighten devotion to shared duties. They try to increase inclusiveness with commonality. And you can see this with any civilization where a religion now has to do a good job in an urban environment, and you see these theologies start to kick in, trying to enhance the duties we all share, to really try to enforce everybody being part of the same religion, to really try to say, look, you need to treat that stranger who you'll only meet once and never again with the same respect, with the same tolerance, with the same hospitality as you would a family member. Right? That's a burden. Second, with civilized theologies, you see changes to extraordinary paranormal agents. Unnatural agents start to get competition from other intellectual explanations about what's going on. So, for example, in Greece, the Greek religions were suddenly getting competition from poets and philosophers telling somewhat different stories, dramatically different stories in some cases, from the old Homeric gods, right? Theologies then try to keep gods and spirits compatible with reason and nature. They try to avoid contradiction, perhaps try to incorporate what they can, but at least come up with some sort of compromise. Now, it is notorious that some kinds and parts of theologies in various religions instead get stubborn, and that can happen, perhaps for understandable reasons, to try to say, no, this new rationality, this new logic, this new science is entirely wrong, false, and quite possibly the work of the devil. But that's actually more the exception than the rule if you look at the interaction of civilized theologies with science and religion over the very long haul, the last roughly 2,000